Living as we do on the east coast of the Highlands of Scotland, it's a great privilege every year to visit the local ploughing match. This is organised by the Easter Ross Ploughing Association, and we try our best every year to help them raise funds for the subsequent year's match by painting a picture throughout the day. In this painting, which is a collector's piece, I was inspired by the horses and swirling mists, which is why I have titled it Breaking Mists. But first, let me introduce you to the stars of this painting, Jock and Star.
Know the time when in perfect peace and harmony a man and pair could grace the land, and the cawing o' the corbies was the loudest sound you'd hear.
What tremendous subjects these two horses proved. Steam was flowing from their flanks, and each breath plainly visible as they toiled before the plough. Their limbs were dark silhouettes against the mist, creating exciting patterns of light and dark, which enhanced the rhythms of their movements. I wanted to capture the close bond between these two as they worked in unison. Oil paint proved a perfect choice, enabling me to contrast their rich coats against the polished gleam of brass and harness they sported for this their special appearance at the ploughing match.
And the horses they are gone, nae wicker frae the stable to greet the frosty dawn, and I miss my bonny pair with the braids all in their hair, and the bird song all around us as we walked him down the lane. In my dreams I see them still in the autumn's early chill, the horses as they plodded on across the field and hill. The pace of life was grand as we worked the fertile land, with pair of handsome horses and the plough they turned the ground. But the tractor's savage rumble has replaced the harness jingle, and my heart is sad to see the passing of the time.
The sun, which finally broke through the cloud late in the morning, would have been a gift for any artist. I was able to incorporate its appearance in this painting with strokes of pure white over layered coloured glazes applied earlier. I love using white as a colour and try to incorporate its use in all of my work. There is nothing to rival the contrast created by scuffing it across glazed impasto underpainting. This burst of sunlight brought subtle colour to the grey sky. Since in the painting the sky covers 2/3 of the composition, the quality of its surface becomes a crucial element of the whole work. Warm and cool colours were layered across the area, mixing visually to create the grey you see. Looking more closely, you can observe pinks, greens, blues and purples weaving among the textures. The branches of the trees interweave across this field of colour, and had to work as a backdrop softened by mist against the primary subject of horses and men. I was amazed at the number of different coloured tints that could be overlaid before their complex structure finally sank back into the distance. The number of tint layers were increased to the left-hand side as the trees move progressively away from us and shrink in apparent size. Eventually, they became so enveloped by the mist that the horses' heads almost seemed to spring out of the canvas by contrast. The canopy of fine branches is achieved through negatively painting wide areas of glazed colour. Impasto textures beneath help suggest the web of detail as overlaid brushstrokes reveal textural detail. Subtle colour begins to emerge at the base of the trees, where the transition between earth and sky is shown as a subtle silhouette of bush, yellowed grass and vertical posts. Aerial perspective dictates that colours should lighten as they become more distant. But this effect is complicated by the addition of mist. With limited light, the contrasts within distant detail between the two men and between them and the horses is far more subtle. The details of the figures had to be constantly muted with tints in order that they should accurately hold their position. Conversely, their silhouettes had to be constantly re-established, so that these two men did not disappear into the mist. As natural points of focus, it was essential to capture their postures faithfully. They also had to be miniature portraits. For it would have been unforgivable had I not captured the essence of their character. Similar problems were inherent in the grass and ploughed field. Taking up only the lower quarter of the painting, the criteria here was that from the nearest grass, which laps the bottom of the frame, it had to swiftly dissolve into space while retaining the colour and characteristics of foliage and furrowed field. The balance between detail and suggestion of detail had to be constantly monitored and corrected. Even the plough, partly visible and partly dissolving into mist, had to be mechanically correct, for these farmers know their machines. A lot has already been said about the horses, but the eagle-eyed of you will probably notice in the painting reveal which follows how the scale of the horses had to be changed as the painting progressed. Initially, I had made the horses too small, having underestimated the drama and impact as they were driven towards me. Thankfully, oil painting is very forgiving, and I was able to afford the horses the grandeur they deserved. making them almost 30% larger than I had previously expected. Final touches to the painting came with the brasses, harnesses, chains and ropes. Brasses and harnesses provided gleams of light against some of the darkest shadow areas in the painting to be found within the lustrous coats of the horses. Chains and ropes provide fine curved patterns across similar dark areas. Linking horses to each other, and then horses to men. They bind the four primary subjects into one unit and complete the composition, holding our eyes comfortably within the frame.
In days now long gone by, I worked beneath the sky, walking wi' my horse and plough, or harvesting the rye. For the ploughing was my life, as I worked the fields of Fife. Now I sadly sit and wonder where our world is going to. We work frae dawn till dusk, in fields of rising dust, to plough wi' Meg and Jock, once the trees had turned to rust. Sick a handsome working pair, with brasses on their gear, we'd turn again frae field to barn as the sun sank o'er the hill. But the tractor's savage rumble has replaced the harness jingle, and my heart is sad to see the passing o' the time, when in perfect peace and harmony a man and pair could grace the land. And the cawing o' the corbies was the loudest sound you'd hear. Times have moved along, and the horses they are gone, nae wicker frae the stable to greet the frosty dawn. And I miss my bonny pair, wi' the braids all in their hair, and the bird song all around us as we walked hame down the lane. In my dreams I see them still, in the autumn's early chill, the horses as they plodded on across the field and hill. Ah, the pace o' life was grand as we worked the fertile land, wi' a pair o' handsome horses and a plough to turn the ground. But the tractor's savage rumble has replaced the harness jingle, and my heart is sad to see the passing o' the time, when in perfect peace and harmony a man and pair could grace the land. And the cawing o' the corbies was the loudest sound you'd hear. Days now long gone by, I worked beneath the sky, walking with my horse and plough, or harvesting the rye, for the ploughing was...
Welcome to my Highland studio and this standalone workshop in oils with Paul Taggart. I've completed this tutorial painting using the alla prima method, in which the layers of paint are built up first thinly using thinners and then with impasto layers of colour, building textures and interweaving colours. Let me move to the painting and show you exactly what I mean. The subject is horses and figures on a very sunny morning. But it's not important to be able to draw either of those, because it's about really painting objects in sunlight. Painting them with reference photographs makes this an awful lot easier. I myself know very little about the musculature of horses, for example, but I can look very carefully and ascertain exactly what's needed for this particular painting. And I lead you through that experience as I work out how the horses and the figures are going to work together. We start off as usual with thumbnails, which are a nice simple way of working out how all of the elements of the composition are going to fit together. How much you can move these elements around to make the picture work in a way which is unique to yourself. The composition begins in the distance with that little village hidden by those autumnal trees. It's fascinating how they can be rendered in a very impressionistic way. You will see that up close the brushstrokes are kept very, very simple, and yet when you pull back from the painting, suddenly the little buildings appear nestled between the trees. Moving forward over that wonderful green field, we move to the trees on the right hand side, and here negative painting of the sky between becomes involved in brushstrokes, directional brushstrokes, which are the light between each of those limbs, which not only give the light but also give them their structure. The walls in the middle distance, moving into the right hand side of the painting, are a study in their own right. I'm often asked how to paint walls, and these are walls with sunlight, with moss, and also walls which move into the distance. So aerial perspective becomes involved in the mixing of the colours. Aerial perspective comes into play all across the field, including the section which has been ploughed. Aerial perspective involves colours becoming lighter and bluer and slightly duller or greyer as they move into the distance. And all these mixes are created from my palette of 6 basic colours. So each of the colour mixes are explained and graduated as they move into the distance to create depth and also to create sunlight. One of the most exciting areas of the painting for me was the sunlight around the figures on the field. Not only were the figures improved by painting them negatively, but also the interweaving and overlapping of colours. Here colours were interplayed with one another. The underpainting, which can still be seen between those bright sunlit strokes, the purple beneath is still coming through, and this is one of the most important aspects of impasto painting in oils, being able to see right through all of the layers, so that those final light colours, which are almost pure white and really stick away from the surface, have a complete contrast to those very dark flat colours which are the underpainting still showing through. The shadows beneath these same figures have been painted by simply not painting them in a way. The earlier layers are left alone, the middle value layers become the shadows, and then as we work towards the sunlight, the impasto layers are built thicker and thicker and lighter and lighter until the contrast is achieved, which gives the appearance of shadows. In other words, we are not painting shadows, but painting light itself. By contrast, the figures in the background are much more muted. Their dark accents are only really mid-values, and so important as they are in controlling the horses, they fall back into the distance and help to give us depth within the painting, help to create a sense of light once again. The pure enjoyment in painting the horses is in creating those wonderful contrasts between the absolute darks within the shadows. Painting those in the first instance so that they are rich and deep and really in a way without detail, soft and shadowy, but contrasting them against the impasto layers on the sides of the head, on the ends of the ear, on the manes, which really brings sunlight into focus on both the manes and on all of those wonderful brasses and harnesses and pieces of leather which move around the horses and hold them together. So by working along with me, you will learn and experience the effects of aerial perspective. You will learn how to create the colours for those mixes, how to graduate them gently into the background. But most importantly, I think, how to put sunlight into your painting, how to contrast that against shadows, and how to use sunlight to make objects really stand out. Backlit subjects are always incredibly exciting, but they do involve soft dark shadows against incredibly bright sunlight. So by working on this particular composition, you will experience exactly what it is to create that sort of light, to create the impasto, which in itself picks up light as the light falls across the surface of the texture and brings extra light to those super highlights that you will be working with at the end of the painting.